Good evening. Decades of failures and cover-ups were finally exposed today when the long-awaited report into the infected blood scandal was published. Londoners were among the tens of thousands who were given contaminated blood between 1970 and 1991, including children. As a result, they were infected with HIV or hepatitis C. Many have died, and thousands of families are living with the consequences to this day. In the last hour, the Prime Minister, almost 50 years after the scandal began, apologised in the Commons. We're going to talk to those who've been affected by this live in the studio, but first, our political correspondent Simon Harris has our report.
Rosadine Dore was part of the Windrush generation. She came from the Caribbean to be a nurse. This is Rosadine on her wedding day. She and her husband settled in Primrose Hill. But in 1997, she died from hepatitis C at the age of just 54.
It just broke my heart. I mean, I don't think I'll ever get over it.
Annette has many reasons to be bitter about what happened to her mum, not least the insensitive treatment from doctors.
They were asking questions like, did she drink? Did she have multiple partners? But my mother wasn't a drinker. She also didn't have multiple partners. So for us, it was just very surprising and very hurtful.
Rosadine was a victim of the infected blood scandal, one of more than 30,000 people to be poisoned by blood transfusions and one of 3,000 who've died.
People put their trust in doctors and the government to keep them safe, and that trust was betrayed. And then the government compounded the agony by telling them that nothing wrong had been done.
Today, Sir Brian got a standing ovation as survivors, the bereaved and campaigners gathered in Westminster to hear the findings of his 6-year-long inquiry. Among the findings were that this disaster was no accident. The risks of blood and blood products causing severe infection were known well before most patients were treated. They were tested without their knowledge or consent and not informed of the results, sometimes for years. And Sir Brian concluded matters were made worse by the official response. To save face and expense, successive governments refused to admit responsibility.
Sometimes we felt like we were shouting into the wind during these 40 years. When we told people, they didn't believe us. They said this wouldn't happen in the UK. But today proves that it can happen in the UK, and it did happen in the UK.
Sir Brian said crucial documents went missing. Others were unavailable for more sinister reasons.
I have concluded that they were deliberately and wrongly destroyed in an attempt to make the truth more difficult to reveal.
The loss of some were blamed on environmental factors, like a flood at Guy's and St Thomas's in the 1990s. The inquiry heard from a woman whose husband was being treated at the Royal Free Hospital in North London after he was infected with both HIV and hepatitis C. In 1985, he had an appointment where he was reassured he hadn't developed AIDS, only to be told the opposite a week later. There's no record of either appointment in his medical notes. I asked Annette what she made of the government's apology.
It doesn't bring her back, does it? It doesn't bring her back, but, you know, they always apologise. That's the problem.
Do you think there should be prosecutions?
I don't think that someone being sent to prison or anything is going to correct the failings of everybody. They have to learn from this mistake. Please check and double check. Make sure that if you're putting anything inside a patient, number one, you know what you're putting inside a patient. My mother didn't get the opportunity like some have today to be at the inquiry. So that's why I'm wearing her dress today. This is one of the last pieces of clothing that she wore. And yeah, I've brought her with me today to say, Mum, you have got a voice. You have got a voice.
Good evening. The woman who was mauled to death by 2 XL bully dogs in East London was today described as a lovely lady by the neighbour who also told us of her devastation that she had died. The woman's been named locally as Angeline Machal, a mum of 2, and she was attacked by the pets in her own home. They were registered and held legally and seized by armed officers. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports from Hornchurch.
On the front drive of a house in a suburban cul-de-sac, paramedics tried desperately to save the life of a woman attacked by 2 dogs, but there was nothing they could do.
There was just police everywhere, you know, and then an air ambulance come round, you know. And that was it, you know, and all the neighbours started coming out and said, what's going on, you know, we didn't get told anything.
Police with guns and riot shields raced to Cornwall Close in Hornchurch. The victim was named locally as Angeline Mahal, believed to be a mother of two who was 50 and the dog's owner. Next to her front door is a sign saying, "Never mind the dog, beware of the kids."
When I found out, I was just absolutely mortified, the fact that that had happened to her with her own dogs in her own house, the fact that she had the dogs, and obviously they've attacked her and mauled her. It's frightening, it's terrifying.
Amy, who walks her greyhounds every day, knows most of the local dog owners, but had no idea there were XL bullies in the neighbourhood.
We've never seen XL bullies, ever, so obviously they're registered, so they would be muzzled, but they've never been walked in this area at all, so we were quite shocked that there were any dogs over there, and a few people I know report never having seen dogs.
But Sedgell did see the dogs once outside the house.
I remember saying to my son only last week, actually, when we were parked, then I saw the dog and I said, you mustn't ever go to pat that dog. And my son said, why not, Mummy, that's a dog, I'm not scared of dogs. And I said, you know, you mustn't, just don't go near these dogs ever.
Police say after the attack, the dogs were shut in a room, allowing officers to safely seize them. This is just the latest in a series of fatal attacks involving XL bullies. In January, a new law made it illegal to breed or sell them. And when in public, owners must keep them muzzled and on a lead. Barely 5 weeks after the law changed, Esther Martin, a grandmother from Woodford in East London, was mauled to death. She was visiting her family in the Essex village of Jaywick when she tried to break up a fight between XL bully puppies. 2 of the dogs were shot dead. And in March, police in Battersea shot dead an XL bully after 4 men were attacked and injured.
Unfortunately, the majority of deaths by dog attacks are in the home. And unfortunately, all the bans and all the different things that the government are doing is all related to being outside the home.
Scotland Yard confirmed the dogs involved in the Hornchurch attack were registered in line with the new XL bully regulations.
So has this then reignited the debate over the legislation then?
There are certainly questions tonight about whether the law needs changing. We spoke earlier to Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent North, who takes an interest in this, and he thinks there do need to be some changes, but cautions that if you target XL bullies, people who want aggressive dogs will simply turn to another breed. And we also heard there from Stan Rawlinson, the dog behaviour expert. He says the XL bully didn't used to be a bad dog until a couple of years ago, but there has been bad breeding, brother and sister, father and daughter, and also the introduction of some aggressive American bloodlines. And his suggestion is that what is really needed is licences for dog owners and breeders to try to control the breeding and over a period of time weed out the bad bloodlines.
OK, thanks very much, Simon.
Good evening, and as you've been hearing, there will be a general election on July the 4th. The announcement was made in the last hour by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in a very wet Downing Street.
Earlier today, I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament. The King has granted this request, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July. Now, I cannot and will not claim that we have got everything right. No government should. But I am proud of what we have achieved together, the bold actions we have taken, and I'm confident about what we can do in the future.
So now a summer election has been confirmed. What happens next? Well, first, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak must request permission from the King. Only then a date will be set for the dissolution of Parliament. Polling date takes place 25 working days after this date. All business in the Commons comes to an end and all 650 seats become vacant. The 5-week campaign then kicks off. All parties will publish manifestos of their policies, and since 2010 there have been televised debates. Finally, voters head to the polls on July the 4th. OK, let's cross now to our political correspondent Simon Harris, who is live in Westminster this evening with reaction to the announcement. Simon, so after months of speculation, we finally have the date.
Yes, Duncan, and when the UK goes to the polls on July the 4th, there are going to be some parliamentary constituencies in London and the home counties which are going to be key battlegrounds. Both Labour and the Liberal Democrats will be hoping to take seats from the Conservatives. We're hoping to speak to the Conservatives, but at the moment they haven't been able to organise a London MP to come and talk to us. A little bit shambolic this early in the campaign, you might think, but I'm delighted to say we are joined by Ferial Clark, who's the Labour MP for Enfield North, and Munira Wilson, who's the Liberal Democrat MP for Twickenham. Ferial, first of all, you must be delighted. Your party's been calling for a general election for weeks.
Absolutely, really delighted that the Prime Minister's finally called the election to give a country the chance to vote for change, to finally bring an end to this chaos and unstable and incompetent Tory government, and finally to have the opportunity to vote for change and give our country its future back.
Were you taken by surprise?
We've been expecting, but yes, I was taken by surprise. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm very pleased.
Munira, I think you were taken by surprise. You were expected to be out for dinner tonight, and
yeah, well, I think
changed.
after Rishi Sunak bottled it for May, I think most of us thought it was going to be October, November time. But to be honest, the Liberal Democrats have been ready for months now, and we're ready to go. And kick this Conservative government out. I think people across the country will be breathing a sigh of relief that he's finally going to dissolve Parliament and go to the country, because after he's brought our NHS to its knees, sent people's mortgages and rents soaring, and allowed filthy sewage to be pumped into our rivers, it's time we got this incompetent government out and got this country the change it needs.
Do you think it's a done deal that this campaign's all but won by Labour, presumably?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We are going to be fighting for every vote. It's in every seat, in every community. Absolutely not. We will go out to the country with our manifesto, with our worked out plan to convince the country to vote for us. We're not taking anything for granted.
OK, let's talk battlegrounds. Munira, home counties or London? I mean, a couple of seats in London, I imagine, Wimbledon, Sutton-on-Cheam, Carshalton and Wallington.
Yes, Esher and Walton as well, just over the river from my constituency, and of course there are seats in Hertfordshire as well, just outside of London, that we will be looking to gain, where we've had some spectacular local election results in recent years.
The Lib Dems traditionally do well in by-elections because you can put lots of resources into one seat. You're going to have to be careful not to spread yourself too thinly in this, aren't you?
Well, if you look at the recent local election results, where we've been fighting campaigns up and down the country, we've had spectacular wins, just like we did in May, in the areas that we've been focused on, and we've knocked on more doors and delivered more leaflets in the first few months of this year than we have done in many years. We are battle ready, and we've got an army of activists who are out there desperate to deliver change and get Liberal Democrat champions elected to represent them in their constituencies and here in Parliament.
The Conservatives are a formidable election machine. You presumably aren't going to underestimate them. And also on the London Assembly elections recently, they probably did better than everyone expected. Is it going to be tough in London?
Look, this very seat we won the Assembly seat off the Tories, and we are going to go after, as I said, every vote. And we were battle ready as well. We were expecting an election on the 2nd of May, so we were ready to go then. So we're ready to go out to the country now and talk to the country now and ask for them to vote for us.
cities of London and Westminster.
Absolutely.
What's top of your list? Presumably Kensington with the tiniest majority. I mean, what are your dream seats that you need to get for Keir Starmer to get through the front door at number 10?
There are many seats up and down the country, in London, in home counties, that will be going after. But of course, the seat where we are at the moment, I'm hoping will turn red as well.
One of the reasons that Rishi Sunak chose today, presumably the inflation figures, the economy is turning round, isn't it?
I mean, if you ask people in Enfield, they don't feel that. They haven't felt it for a very long time. People's mortgages are incredibly high. People are suffering. Cost of living crisis is destroying our community. So Rishi Sunak may be talking about it, but it doesn't feel like that at home with my community.
Ferial Clark, Munira Wilson, thank you very much for talking to us. Well, those are the thoughts from some MPs here in Westminster tonight. We'll be hearing from a lot more in the coming weeks.
We will. Simon, thanks very much. We'll come back to you later in the programme. Back to our top story now, the general election being called on July the 4th. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is still in Westminster for us this evening. Simon, how much of a surprise was this? Did you see this coming?
I don't think anyone saw it coming, apart from Rishi Sunak. It has come as a surprise to many people. Duncan, you know it's a cliche that elections are won or lost in the key battlegrounds, but that is why they're called key battlegrounds. So to get some idea of where we might see the election won or lost in London and the home counties, I've been joined by Professor Tony Travers from the London School of Economics. First of all, Tony, what can we draw from the election for the Mayor and London Assembly about the state of the parties in London?
Well, the Conservatives did relatively well in northwest London and relatively well in southeast London, if you look at the shift of votes from party to party rather than in the mayoral election. So in Harrow, Hillingdon, Northern Brent perhaps, and out of Bexley and Bromley and the other side of the city, those are the places which the London election suggested will be the easiest for the Conservatives.
So the key battlegrounds, what are the ones that Keir Starmer must win in London?
Well, he'll be looking for in the new constituencies, those Chingford and Woodford Green, that's Ian Duncan Smith's constituency, Chipping Barnet, Theresa Villiers' constituency. Then coming into central London, this cities of London and Westminster, never previously won by the Labour Party, is definitely marginal this time, and Nikki Aitken, the current MP, is stepping down.
That would be quite a shock, wouldn't it, for Labour to take London and Westminster?
Well, I mean, Labour having won the council for the first time in the local elections in 2022, I think having a Labour MP for the seat of government would be seen as a double win, really, for the party, if it happened.
And of course, we have to remember that there's slight changes this time. There are more constituencies. The boundary changes mean that more MPs being elected in London.
Absolutely. The number of voters has gone up relative to the rest of the country, so there'll be 75 MPs this time, not 73. And that, of course, means many of them have rather different boundaries, and some of them are cut up altogether.
And we saw Rishi Sunak making his speech in Downing Street, getting rather damp. If he loses, that's going to be seen as a bit of an auspicious omen.
You would have thought, given how good the governments normally are at this kind of thing, that they'd have ensured that an umbrella was near to hand. And of course, there was also some rather pro-Labour music in the background as well. So it wasn't a brilliant set of images, really, to start it all off, but there's weeks to go.
And it's going to be quite fiercely contested here in London?
It'll be very fiercely contested. I mean, Labour already has, or the last election won 46 seats, but Labour could do better, and the Conservatives could lose 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 on current polling.
Tony Travers, thank you very much indeed. Duncan, for the moment, that's all from Westminster. Back to you.
Simon, thanks very much.
Good evening. The countdown has started. We are 6 weeks away from a general election, and with that comes a set of rules and protocol that all parties must abide by. Today, though, London's mayor was accused of breaching those rules. The London Assembly descended into chaos, with some Conservatives walking out after Sadiq Khan was reprimanded by the chair. Labour says no rules were broken, but there's no doubt that on day one of campaigning, the gloves are well and truly off between the main parties, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
One election down, another just around the corner, and things were about to get tetchy at City Hall. This was the first Mayor's question time since Sadiq Khan was re-elected earlier this month. The Conservative chair of the Assembly decided everyone needed a reminder of the rules.
I would just ask the Mayor and members to ensure that their questions and answers do not tip into seeking to effect support for a political party or politician.
But the Mayor had other ideas and wanted to rerun one of his favourite themes from his recent campaign.
And now that the general election has been confirmed for July the 4th, we have a golden opportunity to turn the page on 14 years of Tory division and decline by ushering in an era of change and national renewal with Labour. A Labour government working hand in hand
Mr. Mayor,
with a Labour Mayor
if I can refer you
would be
back,
a game changer for our
Mr.
city.
Mayor,
It would mean
Mr. Mayor,
we could go so
Mr.
much
Mayor,
further
please,
and accomplish so much more.
We'll
on
adjourn
behalf
the meeting
of our community.
for 5.
At which point the microphones were switched off and the chair, along with some Tory members, walked out of the chamber. The Mayor and Assembly are part of the Greater London Authority, which is governed by strict rules during an election. There are things which can be said and things which can't be talked about. This row was about how those rules are interpreted. Labour said the Mayor had done nothing wrong because the election period doesn't officially begin until next week. But the chair of the Assembly said the rules apply at all times, not just during an election.
Well, the rules are basically saying that we cannot use the resources of the Assembly to give support to a particular political party or political standpoint.
That doesn't kick in until much later on during the coming weeks. And what the chair was trying to do was constrain the debate.
It's the Mayor's question time. I'm the chair, and what I say goes.
When the meeting resumed, the Mayor was invited to finish his statement, but the mood had soured.
That being said, Mr. Mayor, would you like to continue, please?
I'm looking forward to answering the questions later on this morning. I hope you can show a bit more class during the course of this meeting.
At City Hall, it seems another election campaign so soon after the last is doing nothing to improve relations.
Simon, things heating up already, certainly at the London Assembly. And there was a Labour member who was missing altogether today.
Yes, noticeably absent from this first Mayor's question time was a Labour Assembly member called Sem Moema. Now, she was only re-elected on May the 2nd, but she's now set her sights on being an MP, and she's one of 2 people who've made it onto the shortlist to be selected as Labour's candidate for Islington North. That, of course, is the seat that's been held for the last 41 years by former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, although he no longer is allowed to sit on the Labour benches in the Commons and has been barred from standing as the Labour candidate. Now, there's a lot of speculation, not denied by his people, that he might now be about to announce he's standing as an independent. At the last election, he had a healthy majority of more than 26,000, should be a safe Labour seat, but if he stands, who knows what will happen. That could be a real headache for Sir Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it certainly could be. It's going to be an interesting 6 weeks, isn't it, Simon? Thank you.